All right, welcome to episode 107 of the series where I'm programming an NES game. Tonight, live on Twitch. Let's get right into this. Last time I had left the game off in a state where after you hit the end of the map, it then switches to filling up the background with a particular metatile. You can see that we've got this last row here, and then you start doing nothing but rows of that particular metatile in the background, and that's not part of the map itself. That is, let me switch that back to normal speed. That is, once tiled loads here, that map ends here at that first row, and then it switches to the repeating metatile here, but the attributes are wrong, so I wanted to get that working and then see if I can get it to transition back to this map and then basically have it ping pong back and forth between map and then repeating background and then map and then repeating background. That way we now have sort of the foundation for our ability to build levels, essentially. And so we'll have it switch back to the map when the camera position goes back to 0. I don't know that we have to have it be quite so long. Here it's a... I don't remember why I'd chosen the value I did for the number of pixels of the camera Y position. It just probably seemed like a good number. One thing we might want to do is also maybe introduce the ability for the camera to oscillate back and forth, left and right. Now, what that will probably mean, if we go to the PPU right now, you can see that we're doing horizontal mirroring, right? Vertical mirroring. We're mirroring the top with the bottom. We might want to switch so that we can oscillate the screen scroll from left to right. And then that would give us the ability to make it look like the screen is kind of moving back and forth. The camera's shifting back and forth if you've played Crisis Force. We can show that. Do I have that on here? I think I do. I think that's pretty early in the game. I'll show that. I don't know that we have to do that tonight, but I like that effect. Crisis Force is a really cool game. Where do I have that on here? I don't have it here. Anyway, check it out. It has an effect where it scrolls back and forth, and it's pretty cool. Something to consider. So let's start with fixing the attributes because we wanted to use the actual palette that we've loaded for that metatile. Which palette is that? It looks like that is likely palette 1, which would make sense because it's, or the first palette, I should say, which would make sense because it is metatile 1, and we have to always offset by 1 because the first metatile is the empty metatile. So let's dig into this here. So when we're starting off and we're transitioning to the repeat scroll mode, the first thing we're doing is we're loading up the next row with the tiles based on, we're looking up what the metatile, where the metatile lives in the we're looking it up in the global set of metatiles so that we have the right offset for it in the char ROM, right? We talked about this in the Monday video. So even though it may be metatile 1 for this map, that's only because we've normalized it based on all of the metatiles actually used in that map, and that gets translated to one of the metatiles that are used across all the maps possible. And hopefully there's overlap, and so we can save some, save some space by doing that. But that's why we're doing the lookup here in this metatile lookup. And then we're doing our shift based on the number of tiles in a metatile, which is 4, and then we're finding that's our base offset into the actual tiles that we want to use. So then we're filling up the new tiles array, which is just one row of new tiles, and we have to tell the NMI code that we want it to actually load that new tiles array into the background memory when we're done. So it will also, where is that? There is a set to the metatile flags, or there should be. Where is that? Yeah, so we set metatile flag to 2, which is where we're telling the code later on that we've updated that array and we need to drop it into the current screen mem location. Now with our attributes right now, just because we've got plenty of time in the NMI right now, we're not doing a whole lot. We're actually just copying, re-updating the attribute buffer every time that we load a new row. We just update the entire thing instead of just a row of the attributes. That saves us some headache of having to keep track of which row of attributes we updated and need to update in the background data. We may eventually have to change that out because we may not have the time to do the 64 stores in addition to the 32 that we have to do for the tiles. So all of that said, now we've got to update the appropriate attribute location with the new row of tiles that we're placing in there. So got to remember, if we're keeping track of that index, I think we have something called attribute index. Yeah, so that attribute index is literally the next row that we would be updating when we are updating the attributes. So we will use that, at least for this first attempt when we are going through here, and see if that changes that first row we load in properly. Alright, so in this loop that we're doing, we're using Y for the metatile that we want to load, or the subtile of the metatile, I should say, that we want to load in there. We're storing the location into new tiles X. And then probably what we want to do is so let's transfer X to A and then push A onto the stack, because we're going to need that value back, but we're going to load X with attribute index. And then we're going to load A with attribute, what did I call it? Attribute buffer X. So that's going to give us our current attribute value. Now, let me think about how. So based on whichever row we're updating, we need to be either updating one half the byte or the other. It doesn't, let's see. And we also have to compensate for the fact that there is a half row at the bottom that is essentially useless in the attribute buffer because of the fact that it's not a square screen, it's rectangular. And that's caused us all sorts of fun headaches in the past when dealing with attributes. So I guess the main thing is that if we're not in the row, we got to check to see if our attribute index is in the last row. And that last row is going to be... Oh, let me think about this, because it's like a bad dream. You just keep the memory of all the attribute stuff blocked out of your mind, right? So the full attribute byte is 32 by 32. So there are 7, right? So it's 8 attributes across and 7 down. Well, partially 7 down. So if our attribute index is, let's see, 64 minus 8, no, not times, 64 minus 8. So if it's 56, which is 38 in hex, compare it to 38. Compare x to 38. And that'll mean we're in the last row, which means that even though we might normally want to update the bottom position of the byte, the lower least significant portion of the byte, we actually, I always get that confused. I think it's the lower part of the attribute tile is the most significant portion of the byte. Paul's asking, are we using horizontal mirroring? Yes. No. I always forget which one is which because it's seemingly... No, it's vertical. It's vertical mirroring, right? Because it's across the vertical line. Horizontal is horizontally mirrored, right? Did I get that right? I always confuse that. No, it says vertical. Yeah, okay. I got that right. Let me go back to the attributes here. No, not sprites. What am I doing? I'm getting myself all confused here. Attributes. Okay. Well, so this is one contiguous stream of the tiles. Come on, Messin. When the map loads up, it's a little bit easier to see it correctly. This side is was going to be for a status bar, but end up dumping that. All right, so right, so the bottom is in the most significant bit and part of the bit, and the top is in the least significant part of the bit, or byte, I mean. So yeah, it's confusing. All right, so if we're at 38, that means we're at the attribute portion that is at the bottom. And that means that we don't actually care if it's supposed to be top or bottom. We know it's got to be top because bottom doesn't exist there. And so just thinking about how this works with our alternating bit pattern that we're using, for the metatile, if there's a good way to handle that. I guess it doesn't actually, let me think about this. So it doesn't really actually impact that at all, because yeah, it doesn't impact that at all because it's updating. The metatiles are 16 by 16, so they fit into this pretty neatly. It's just a matter of, I wonder if I should just put this into its own separate loop. That might be cleaner than trying to put it into here and dealing with pushing and pulling off the stack. I think that's what I'm going to do. Alright, so then we know what the metatile is, and that maps directly to the palette. The only thing is we say load A. And then I just want to subtract one. I don't want to modify what BG loop metatile is, but then I want that into temp. And then load X with 0. And then compare that, and that should just be 8. Wait, should it just be 8? It's 8 attributes, but got to think about this for a second, because I want to do this right the first time, or at least with minimal bugs. And I always end up screwing this up somehow. So store temp. So I've got that, and then I would want this actually to be the attribute index. And then I think that's what I want to do. And then I can store that into temp2. I think I can do that, right? Oh, didn't want to do that. Oh, range error. My least favorite problem to deal with. Shooter ASM 1080. And then 1083. It's just like busy work to fix these. It's just irritating. Okay. So, where was I? Okay. So Temp2 has now the offset that I want to be at with attribute index. And then the only thing I need to figure out, we'll just kind of... Well, I guess I could do that. I'm debating if I can just sort of blindly update. I don't think it's going to look good. I was going to say we could just update the entire byte. But I don't think that's going to work because... I mean, it'll work, but what'll happen is we'll start seeing the attribute updates at the bottom a little bit more than we already do, which is pretty minimal right now, and I'd say okay under the circumstances. We can always tighten that up a little bit and have it occur a little bit earlier so it's off screen at the time. Actually, you know, I just thought of something. Part of the reason we see that attribute update like this is because when we switch... It's interesting that when we switch from one name table to the next, what we're actually doing is we're updating... Well, actually, we don't see that, do we? Do we? Uh-oh. What happened? Oh, yeah, that's... I wrote us into an infinite loop here. That's what I get for interrupting my work. I just was thinking about something. Yeah, you don't... Okay, you don't see the attribute updates. For some reason, I was thinking that because of the way we're switching name tables, you get the attribute updates causing a problem on the bottom, but you don't, because it's updating at a different location in the name table than what's on the bottom, so you don't see that behavior with the overscan like that. All right, going back to where we were. Are you assuming top and bottom 8 scan lines are in overscan? Yeah, I am. I know that that's not 100% true with some emulators and what's it called? And clone systems. But I mean, let's see what that looks like with the overscan turned off. I mean, it's obviously visible, and we could fix that. I'm not super concerned by it right now. It's not great, obviously, to see that at the bottom like that. But we have more challenging things to fix right now and get working. And when I do this, it's like it doesn't exist. I don't see it when I play it on an NES. No new magic or anything. Right now, it's just purely hand waving and focusing on some other things right now. So, all right, so. What I want to do is shift that left 4 times and then load, no, not load, or a that. I should clear. It's not a rotate, so it just adds 0. I forget. We had a problem with this another time. When we were doing a rotate, we weren't clearing the carry, and so it was rotating the carry bit on and creating problems. So, but with ASL, I don't believe that works that way. I think that just shifts. And it shifts the 0 on. Let's just double check so we save ourselves. Yep, 0 is shifted in. Okay. So ASL 4 times and then or the value of temp again. That gives us what we want to use for our attribute. At least for this row potentially. Let's just try putting this in and make sure that at least we've got that bit of the logic right, and then we'll worry about the positioning based on the attribute. Well, yeah, okay. Let's start there, and then we'll worry about the rest in a minute. So store a attribute buffer. Stop. Load a temp. So that's our palette value, and then we're going to store an attribute buffer offset x, and then we're going to compare that to temp2, and okay. So that should load the first part of this correctly. And what I was going to say something different, but then I realized that we are always transitioning when we're hitting the edge of a screen or the edge of a map, which, well, it doesn't always correlate to the transition to another part of. All right, so that assumption was kind of stupid. I was going to say it always correlates correctly to the swap between the name tables, but that's not true. That's not true at all. So depending on where the attribute index is referring to, we either need to be in the lower 4 bits or the upper 4 bits if we are updating the bottom. Sorry, the top. Well, we have to shift accordingly, basically. So just for the sake of testing this out, let's wait a minute. Did I really just do that? I shifted that too many times, is what I did. If I had that right, I shifted it too many times. That's why it didn't update. Let's hyperdrive this forward a little bit so we can get to the transition. So why store a attribute buffer x, transfer x to a, store that in temp2. The other possibility is we do this, and then we do this. What? That gives us. We're gonna do that 4 more times, right? Because we shifted twice. We ORed on the other value, and then we shift twice, and then twice. Yes. Okay. So I'm just trying to make it work in this particular condition, just to make sure that something is actually being set. This is not the final code. And then once we've got that going, we've got to figure out how we're going to determine when we should be updating what part of the attribute. So that did not work. Why? Is there a flag for updating the attributes? There is. Okay, I'm not setting that. I forgot that I had added that in. So let's do this. Let's go back to this version first, and then we gotta make the metatile flag set to 3 that we're updating the tiles and also the attributes. Yeah, 2,000 lines, 1 file. I've split some of it up. Sometimes it's harder to deal with messing around between files like that, so it just is a little easier to have it all in one. Alright, that worked. That updated the attributes now properly. Alright, so now, other than sort of arbitrarily guessing what the attribute offset should be, should probably figure out, based on the index, if it should be in the higher portion of the byte or the lower portion of the byte. Let's see here. No, not all in the NMI. The game logic and the graphics logic to prepare what has to get updated during NMI is done outside the NMI, and then the NMI is doing only graphics code logic. Did that pretty early on. I also don't hardcode my sprite positions. I know Kevin gets sort of riled up about that one. In fact, I think I'm probably so far opposite of how Kevin does his sprites, because not only are they not hard-coded, they're also, you know what, I might have taken the rotation out. They were rotating in position with every cycle through so that we could get flicker properly if we ran out of hardware sprites on the scan line. And so that, yeah. But that got broken when I switched over into 2 separate lists of entities, because I'm tracking the game objects, like the ships, separate from the projectiles now, so that I have a better way of tracking what is colliding with what, rather than trying to encode that information into object types. It's just basically projectiles will check if they collide with objects. They don't check against other projectiles, and some of the objects will collide with other objects, but not all of them. Alright, so this worked, but let's go back to what I was doing before. So it's a 64 byte array. Let me think about this here. So it's a 64 byte array, and the last row doesn't matter. So this would be 56. Index. So let's see. So row 0, and then row 8, and then row. Although that's the. So what I want to do, this is kind of annoying. Man, attributes are the worst. So we've got our attribute, right, byte, where we've got our 32 by 32, and I'm updating rows of metatiles, you know, as I'm going through the screen. And I don't want to update the entire attribute value, the entire byte. But the attribute index value that I have is just literally the index into the 64-bit, 64-byte array. I'm not tracking the sub rows. Well, I sort of am. I'm doing it in this background tile value, but I'm not tracking which row of the 16 by 16 metatiles from the attributes I'm updating, which is part of the... Yeah, I know only the half nibbles matter, only half the nibbles matter, but the question is which half, right? Like, depending on the length of the map that you're dealing with, it may be that you end on one half or the other, unless I make it a rule. Right, no, I know, yeah, sorry, right, you're right, the last row of 8 bytes still matters, it's only half of it matters. Yeah, sorry, you're right, I misspoke when I said that. But I'm still just kind of thinking about how... If I could hold alcohol, I'd have beer and do this, but it would just deteriorate pretty quickly. So it's got to be seltzer. I'll save that for later. So... Actually, funny story about that. One stream early on, when I first started, I'd had a little more scotch than probably was a good idea before the stream. And not that I was drunk or anything. I was not. But it was a little hard to concentrate on assembly language programming after the amount that I had had. So... Don't drink in code, kids. All right. I am keeping track somewhere of which half of the metatile were up, or the attribute we're updating, because I think I've got a mask that I use for that process. That's probably what I need to be using to do this. Let me think about this. Oh, am I just... Okay, that is the mask itself. So the mask is also the mode. All right, I thought that's what I had done. So based on... Cool, so I can just reuse this. Based on... the attribute mode, I'll know which part of the byte I need to update. The question is, when I do the flip, I think it's, yeah, so I do the flip of the mode after I'm done with that row. So it will be set up to work. I limit myself to 1 beer for second half of the stream. Yeah, I'm just really not good about alcohol in general. Like, I can't have, like, one beer is usually enough for me, so I know to limit myself. But with other stuff, depending on just the day, it hits me harder than other days, and so it was an interesting stream. I got some stuff done. I was having a little bit of a hard time because I think I was working on attributes at the same time, and that was just a bad combination. All right, so based on the attribute mode, we'll know which part of the byte we're supposed to update. So let's see here. You have to earn it. Yeah, I like that. I like that idea. Load a attribute buffer X. We're going to load that, and then we're going to mask it against the attribute mode. Right? The attribute mode is actually just which part of the byte actually matters to us. And then we're going to, instead of doing this, we're going to OR the temp against it, and then we're going to store it back. So whichever part of the byte we want to update will get masked to stay, masked out by attribute mode, and then we'll OR the new values we want in there. And then the only thing we need to do at the end here is we need to store that. We'll load attribute mode. We want to flip the bits there and then store that back into attribute mode. All right, and then based on the attribute mode, we also need to determine if we need to shift this more or not. So we've got the lower 4 bits set here, and then load a attribute mode and then compare it. We'll store it temporarily there. Load a attribute mode, compare against let me look at this again because I don't remember, bottom half or top half. Branch if not equal to over here. So if it's the top half, then we have to load A with temp and then shift it left 4 times. Otherwise, it's already in position correctly. We did our compare there. Branch not equal. And then we don't actually have to touch it here because it's already been stored. If it was okay, we left it. Otherwise, it was shifted and stored back in. Okay, so that might be right for... This is only the first part of it. We've got when we initially do the transition. So let's make sure that that stayed in working order. Okay, cool. So that still looks good. So now what we need to do is basically do the same thing. We can probably factor this out into a subroutine somewhere, but I don't want to touch this right now. So in the place where we are updating a new row, load new tile row. Oh, you know what? If we make this 3, I think we're done. because I forgot that I had already made it call load new tile row, so I didn't have to write this a second time somewhere. That was where we were going initially, was I was writing two versions of the same code. And then I was like, oh, I can just call this again with the new indexes and stuff. Oh, you know what might be broken, though? The attribute index is probably not getting updated accordingly. So it might work for the first two repeated rows, and then it's gonna... All right, let's fix that, because the attribute index is not getting it's not getting decremented going up the screen properly. So what we need to do is, once we're done with this, we need to load the attribute index. Set the carry, subtract 8, compare it to if it were 0, what would we get? F8, branch not equal to, not Ben, branch not equal to there. So if we were at the bottom of the attribute index array and we subtracted 8, then we roll over to F8, which is not a valid value for our array. So what we want to do is set it to be 38 hex. Probably write that here, because I'll forget why I did this. Update the attribute index, taking care to make sure that if we've gone off the bottom of the array, I should say the top of the name table, we want to circle back to the bottom properly. Oh, that's not right. Eventually we'll fill up the attribute table and it'll look good, but that's not right at all. All right. We're doing this too many times. What am I doing wrong? Yeah, we're doing it too many times. And yeah, we should only do it when we get from bottom half to top half. Once we switch back to bottom half, we have to do it. All right. Load attribute mode, compare to did I get that right? Bottom half is going to have branch not equal to that guy. Uh-oh. Chose to make this a label just because we've already got the anonymous label here. Well, we could just call this now, can't we? I've been bitten by having too many anonymous labels in the same area of code, and it gets ugly real quick. There's too many PPU viewers open. All right, let's see what we got here. All right, so we're updating the attributes way too aggressively. It is looking correct now. It's interesting. Wonder why that is. Oh, should we do this after we switch modes? I guess so. I don't need to do this here. Right, so we've got this, and then we switch the modes. I don't have to load it again because we've already got it here. So if we are in a situation where we are in the bottom half coming up, then the index needs to be subtracted for the next time we go through and update the row. And if it's in the top half, then we don't have to subtract because we're basically just going to update the same row of bytes again, just a different set of bits, right? Bottom half is the top of this. The top half is the actual bottom of the screen. So bottom half, top. Actually want, I think, this. We're doing, my naming is maybe somewhat questionable here. This is yet another thing that I just, for some reason, is confusing. The portion of the byte that is valid, that we're updating in this case, is the top, right, and left. And this is the bottom, right, and left. Even though, for some reason, in my mind, the most significant bit, for whatever reason, makes sense to be the top of the tiles. I don't know. There's probably some sort of engineering reason why that made more sense, but like something about the way maybe the bytes are shifted off of the memory or something, and it's faster to not have to rearrange them, or who knows. But regardless, it's confusing to me. So what we're saying is that we want to, when we go over from the top to the bottom, and the bottom is the, well, yeah, so from this top to this bottom, and then we're back at, no, because we're scrolling up. So the bottom to the top. So when we go to the bottom, and this gives us the top half. Yeah, so when we're at top half, that was what I had changed it to. rendering lowest bits feel first, I guess. Yeah, again, I kind of feel like it's got to be some sort of, from a just a pure raw engineering perspective. It was like, okay, well, the first thing we're drawing is, is easiest to just shift off the highest order nibble or something, and that's why it works that way. But it's confusing as hell. I every time I look at it, I find myself just kind of rereading and remapping that in my brain to make sure that I didn't mess that up. Right, so if it's top half that we're dealing with, that means that's the bottom of the tile. And if it isn't, we will branch to this. And if it is, we will then load the index and set the carry and subtract 8 and store that into the attribute index and compare it to F8 and branch. Actually, we can just do, I don't know why I did that. Branch carry set to there. So if we didn't clear the carry when we did the subtract, we'll go there. Otherwise, we load 38 and store that into attribute index, and we're good. All right. Great. Let's try that again and see if that fixed our... I mean, the good news is the attributes are getting updated correctly. They're just getting updated way too much. Yeah, we're still, or too often. Why is it scrolling? Back up for a second here. Yeah, so the attribute updates are in yellow, and they are way more... I guess I'm just setting it too often. Oh. I appear to have lost connection to the live stream. Huh. Letting everybody know the stream is wigging out here. Let me see something. At least downstream speed seems like it's okay. It's just kind of... OBS is showing very bad connection overall. I'm going to try dropping the stream and reconnecting. letting everybody know that I'm trying to reconnect to the stream here. The recording is hopefully still going. It's weird. My connection seems like it's okay. Oh. My upload connection has completely died. Just letting, looks like my upload speed is just totally tanked. The download speed is fine, but upload is less than a megabit, so... Huh. Yeah, my upload speed is gone. All right. Sorry to do this while in the middle of the recording, but let me just see what's going on here real quick. If well, let me let me just tweet this out, and then I'll continue here. So weird. All right. Well, while we're checking that and waiting for that, I'm going to see if I can figure out what's going on here. So it looks like the problem is that we're updating the attribute buffer too frequently. But I don't know why it would be doing that, since it should only be doing that after we after the attribute row gets updated, right? So we update the attribute in that we go through and we update the attribute buffer with the changes we want to update it with, store it, increment x, compare it to whatever our offset should be when we're done adding to it, adding to x, and then if it's not equal, we go back to this. If it is, then we set up our flipping, our bit flipping whatever, and we flip our attribute mode accordingly. And I mean, this should only happen when we do the load of the new tile row. So let's take a look. At this code. And restart. So we've done it this one time, and now we're doing it again. But that's already like too much, right? Or, well, is it too much? Yeah, we're one row too far. So is it because the attribute index is wrong coming into it the first time? Or what? What's the deal? Why is this? Sorry, I was checking my internet connection still. Why is this updating so frequently? The only thing I can think of is that the index is too far ahead. Which might be which might be okay. Sorry. Whew. During the normal mode, but during this mode for the repeat scroll, we have to have it be slightly different. I'm trying to remember. Trying to remember if we had the attribute index refer to. Well, I feel like it would refer to the next row in the attributes that we want to update. Yeah, so that looks okay. So going through this, if we load the attribute index into X and transfer X to A, clear the carry, add the carry, store it into temp2, and then we use that. If we're not in, if we haven't switched over to a bottom portion of the row, then we would do nothing. Otherwise, we subtract 8 from the attribute index. Which means that this should happen only every other time. We can verify that. We can look at every time it compares and see if it steps through each time, if it actually goes through every time it does the comparison. Let's take a look at that. So A has what value right now? F. So we compare it, and it is equal. Top half is F, okay. So next time through, compare it. It's not equal, so then it skips it. So attribute index stays at 18. And this time it goes through. So we store it. Okay. Next time through, it's not equal, so we don't do anything. Oh, you know what? We're doing this, yeah, we're doing this too frequently because we're calling this every 8 pixels, not every 16 pixels, so it's updating it twice as fast as it needs to for the attributes. The attributes have to only be updated every 16. All right, so that's actually pretty easy to deal with. What we would want to do is we want to just basically look at believe we just want to look at if it is a factor. Right now this is doing the call. Let's see, branch not equal to skip row decrement. Okay. So we want to compare that to scroll Y. Because specifically what we want to do is want to see if this is a factor of 16 before we bother with the attributes. The attributes only matter every 16 pixels. And so then this becomes 2, and let's background loop metatile set subtract this. All right, we only have to do this load a scroll Y we're going to end this against 15, because if it's a factor of 16, we will get 0, otherwise we will not. Branch if not equal to skip, scroll, attribute, that thing. Actually, we could just jump to skip row process at that point. Where did that code go? There. Branch of equal to this anonymous label, otherwise jump to skip row process. All right. So now that that's that, check if this pixel is a factor of 16, because we only have to update attributes every 16 pixels. All right, so that's that. And if it is, then we do this whole process here. That makes sense why it was sort of behaving in a strange way. Okay. So then that's all this, and the rest should be good. I think. Let's see. All right. And then we'll just end it here if this works. Maybe Monday we'll do streaming to kind of make up for the fact that the stream got cut short due to my crappy internet. That's an interesting effect. That's not what I was expecting to see, but the other thing, what did I do? New tiles. One is, okay, that was the other thing I forgot to do. If we're doing this, then we need to, load a metatile flag, or a 1. Actually, can just increment it. Got to tell the NMI code that we are now in the process of updating, or we will be updating the, or we have updated the attributes, and so it should dump the contents of the attribute buffer into memory. All right, why did this break my scrolling? Is there... Oh. Okay, yeah, that would make sense. Skip attribute. Skip repeat attribute update. We still got to do this stuff at the end. That's generally helpful. And this attribute mode flip, and also this attribute mode stuff here is now, it's got to be there. rid of that label. Okay. So we still have to do this stuff that's here with the BG tile getting the bits set. So that's why that was now broken for the regular tile update. And then that's that. Branch of equal to there. Yes. Okay. So hopefully that will fix the fact that the tiles were not getting updated properly. All right. Why are you still only updating those properly every other time? Getting closer. What did I take out of... Load the background tile and I guess that only happens. Yeah. That's also the wrong place for that. I just should have kept all of that together. So once we're done with populate single tile, then we have to do this. All right, let's try that again. All right. Oh, come on. Really? What's going on with this? So after it initializes everything, it goes in, it does this lookup, it stores it, it clears the carry, it adds with carry the BG tile to the base offset, transfers A to Y, gets the BG tile, and it does the exclusive OR. This is all stuff that worked fine. It's just that this part's not working correctly. I don't understand. that shouldn't have any impact on anything else. Because we're not using BG tile anywhere, but for this. And going into, when we're flipping over to the repeat mode, let's see. Yeah, we're setting that to 2. Did I just not reload it properly or something dumb like that? Why is it not updating? So metatile flag has to be 2. Oh, wait a minute. That's not right. That should be 2. Jump to load. Set new row update. Check to see if the memory address has been decremented. Which means the last set new row update. Repeat. Compare if repeat scroll. Okay, 7. Skip that. Blah blah blah. Load 2. So we're updating the row. Store metatile flag. Jump. Load new tile row. Skip row decrement. Store a metatile flag and jump to this. Is this used at all? It is. Okay, so we're going to that. Okay. And then if so this is BG tile, that gets flipped back and forth here while we're doing that loop. And then we reset it to just be the alternating. Yeah, that's fine, I think. And then check if scroll Y is a factor of 16. Branch if equal. To there. And then we're just, oh yeah, you know what, that could be why, because if metatile flag was being set to 3, then it would not know what to do. Sorry, yeah, it would increment it to 4, and then it wouldn't know what to do because 4 is not a valid metatile flag value. So that could explain why it was then alternating in a weird way every other time. Let's see. Yep. Okay, so now the only thing that's not right is that it is updating the attributes. It's updating the attributes correctly, but not at the right time. It should be doing it sort of a little bit ahead of where it's doing it right now. So let's fix that. Instead of using scroll Y, let's use if BG tile BG tile is 2, that means the next update we're doing is at the bottom of the metatile, which means we would want to update, or do we want to do it that way? If BG tile is 0, then we've just updated the bottom of the tile. And so we should update the attribute. I think that makes sense, right? Like if we put new tiles in for a new part of this meta tile we're loading, the attribute needs to get updated at that point to reflect that. And we want to do it at that time rather than at some other time where it's going to become a problem. So what we're seeing though is we're seeing the updates of the attributes scrolling into the bottom. It's interesting that happened. It's almost like it's a weird discrepancy between the scroll and where we think we are. I think that might be a next episode thing, because we got the attributes working, at least that in the end they will be visually correct. But the question is why. Okay, so actually part of it makes sense. Part of it is weird. So like the fact that we're getting the entire chunk there, you see how this part here is updated and it's gray? That makes sense, because although we only updated this part of the tile, the attribute is the whole 16 by 16, right? So that makes sense. What doesn't make sense is this, we're seeing a weird discrepancy where the scroll is getting ahead of or behind. Is it ahead or behind? It looks like maybe it's getting behind the update, and then that's why we're seeing the update at the bottom. Now, if we switched to horizontal mirroring, that wouldn't be a problem, because then they wouldn't be the same portion. I think we've tried this before, and it has broken things. I want to say that's how you do that. That didn't do anything. Is it maybe... Oh, you know what? Because it's MMC3, you gotta change the mirroring. Let's go to the mappers here. I forgot about that. MMC3. Eventually we should just get out of this, because we don't even use MMC3 at all. We really don't need to be doing this. Horizontal 1. Okay, that's what I figured it was, but that would hide this problem, because then we would be updating off-screen stuff. Right, because the bottom isn't being impacted by what's happening at the top. Now, obviously, that breaks it broke part of the map loading, but that looks pretty good. We could just do that, right? We could just flip over to MMC3 and use horizontal mirroring instead of vertical, and then we wouldn't have to worry about these unsightly updates, and you know, we just got to fix that problem with the scrolling and the offsets that we're using, and whatever else we're doing for the mirroring. Maybe we'll do that so that we get something, the scrolling looks nicer, because right now, at least while it's working, it looks pretty good. Let me, just out of curiosity, let me go to, where is it? Video, overscan, 0, 0. Let me go back here. See if we see any weird artifacts with the overscan turned off. No, it's looking pretty good, actually. Yeah, maybe we'll do that in the next episode. We'll fix this so that the horizontal mirroring works, because then again, we have the ability to do what I was talking about before, where we can scroll back and forth, left to right, to kind of give a little bit more feeling of motion, similar to what they do in Crisis Force. That's not as important as, you know, fixing this actually so that it works. But we'll get that taken care of. But otherwise, the tiles and the attributes are mostly okay. I think there's some sort of discrepancy where we're updating the tiles faster than we're scrolling. So we'll have to look at that. It might just be a simple mismatch in the calculation and the math there, where we're updating, expecting one speed, but getting another on the scroll. So anyway, as always, thank you for watching. Sorry about the stream getting cut off there. I don't know what happened to my internet here, but we'll try again. We'll do a little stream on Monday. We'll see if that goes any better. But if you want to reach me, I'm on Twitter at Clearvis. I will, this video obviously is uploaded to YouTube, just like all the rest of the videos. If you have any questions, feel free to comment there. As people have been, we're at, the subscription count there has just blown my mind. We're at like 940, which is crazy, but awesome. If you haven't already checked it out yet, you should definitely check out the Kickstarter for NEScape or Nescape by Kahan Games. It's already funded, but if you are interested, it's an escape room game for the NES. It looks pretty awesome. You can use the NES mouse. I definitely recommend it. And you can just get the ROM or the game complete in box. There are a couple of different other tiers there. You should check it out. So yeah, I think I've covered everything. So see you Monday. Again, I'll try and stream then. Sorry about the weirdness with the stream. Have a great weekend. Thanks for watching. See you next time.